Alright everybody, we are here with the Spoils Limited Championship. This is a top 8 draft. We're seeing I guess this is the top 4 here. We've got Bernie Makino versus Dan Sotelo. My name's Stephen Woolley, and with me is Robert Johnson, who is an old Magic player.
That's right.
Old Magic player who has started getting into the Spoils and is here to ask questions as any Magic player would about maybe how the Spoils works or what these players are doing. Now, you'll notice right off the bat, both players play their 2 staple resources. That's a means of making sure that you at least have some resources to start the game with. Both players also start with a faction out. You'll see that at the very bottom of the table there. Bernie is playing the Alliance of Handy Weirdos, which is the Elitism faction, and Dan is playing the Tournament faction. So Bernie's going to start at 20 influence, but he gets a special ability where he can pay 3 and give any character +1/+1. Whereas Dan doesn't have an ability, but he starts at 25 influence. So we see almost the exact opposite at the start here. We have Bernie running a Rage Elitism coming out of the gate, and Dan's running the Deception Arcanist. So it looks like Dan's going to have to play more of a kind of a control-y game, and Bernie is wanting to play more of an aggressive game, as we know from Elitism and Rage together. So Bernie kicks it off first turn, plays a Rage down, and then plays the Nimble Conscript. Pretty decent character. It's a 3/2/3. And we'll see if Dan wants to respond. This is the Spoils, Robert. Welcome.
This is the Spoils. One of the things that maybe you can elaborate on while they're kind of taken away here is at what point really do you want to play a face-down resource? Do you ever do that just as a matter of routine, or is it always a deliberate move on the player's part?
That's actually a good question to ask, especially with a game with Bernie here. Bernie has long been a proponent of every turn you play a resource.
Right.
Every single turn until you hit to like 15, 16. Here Bernie plays another resource going along those lines. Swings with a Nimble Conscript. Dan doesn't have any blockers, so he takes 3. Then Bernie plays a Robustical Badass. Now, the Badass has a threshold ability where if you control 3 Rage, at the beginning of your turn, your opponent's faction just straight up loses an influence. So he's going to try to burn Dan out here for a little while. Now going back to those face-down resources, yes, and there are a lot of cards that flip up as well, which make them actually good to play face-down, and coming out later. Hold on, Dan is playing a Witty Worm. It's a very interesting card that essentially plays itself for free whenever you play a resource. The way that it reads and the way that it interacts, you can play it, pay 1 to play it while you're playing a resource, put that played resource back in your hand, and then replay it. So essentially the Witty Worm comes out for free. And why he has a 3-speed, I am not sure. I believe he should have been probably a 2/2/1.
It's a fast worm.
It is an awfully fast academic worm. And Dan also plays a great card, the Shadowy Mugger, for 4. You know, that's a 2/1/3 covert character. So Bernie's not going to have a chance to block him. But on top of that, whenever he comes into play, you can search your opponent's deck for any card you want and put it in his discard pile. So Dan's going to get a glimpse at everything that Bernie has available to him right now, which can be very significant, especially in these limited games, where you know what you need to hold removal for, what you need to look out for tactic-wise, and those kinds of things. Anyway, the face-down resources, it's a mechanic to make sure that you can always build for the future. You can always, even if you don't draw into resources, you can still stay in the game. And that's an important thing. So as far as how often it happens, usually you won't see it in the first few turns because due to the Spoils Mulligan, players will hold 2, 3, 4 resources in their hand. And then once you get past that point in the game, players have to make that decision whether they're going to play some of their good cards face down or if they're going to draw a card for their turn and just try to tempo through. And a lot of times you'll see Bernie play face downs, and I imagine he will this game as well. So you see Robustical there is burning that 1 right off the top at the start of the turn. Bernie, there you go, plays a face down resource. Looks like he doesn't have any other resources in hand, so he decided to opt for the future there. And playing face down can be really tricky sometimes. Robustical swings in for 3, Dan doesn't block. Nimble Conscript again, Dan doesn't block. So that's a total of 6 damage. And then Bernie plays out the Ascendant Madcap. That's a 3/4/3, and every time you play a Rage, you can put a token on him, and he gets a strength for each token. So that guy,
nice.
Yeah, it could potentially get bigger, and you're limited. That's a big deal. Shadowy Mugger swings through on Dan's turn. It's a covert character. Bernie can't do anything about it except hope for either a covert of his own to block or maybe some removal. But two every now and again isn't too bad. Here Dan plays the Mesmerizing Enchantress. Good character, and when it comes out you can choose 3 characters and they can't attack until the start of your next turn. So Bernie's 3 characters there are locked down for this turn and can't attack, which is going to give Dan some time. There Bernie plays another face down. As I was saying, playing this face downs can be it can be a tough decision sometimes because you have to choose which of the cards that, and if you drafted a good deck, all the cards in your deck are going to be pretty good.
And he just paid a 3 there, right?
Yes, and then you paid 3 to draw right off the bat, look for something, and can't attack, passes the turn. Both players are sitting at 6 resources. Dan's going to swing it again for 2 with that covert. Woody Worms is kind of sitting, Enchantress is kind of sitting, I believe she's a 2/4. Dan's going to pay 2 for an Obscene Astrologer, an excellent new Arcanist card on a Seed 2. And you can tap him and essentially play a tactic that is equal to or less than the cost of the number of Arcanist resources you have in play. But it can't exceed 5.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah. So right now you can play a tactic of 2 or less for free by depleting the Obscene Astrologer. And there he goes. He's going to respond to Bernie's card draw when he's out of resources by playing Dry Gulch with the Obscene Astrologer. And that is remove a character from the game where its life is equal to or less than the number of rogue resources you have. The Bustical Badass is 3 health, 3 life, and he has 3 rogue resources in play, so Dry Gulch takes him out of the game.
Easy peasy.
There, Bernie drew into an Elitism resource, looks like, and played it down, so he's sitting at 7 now. And that might unlock some cards in his hand now that he's up to 2 Thresh on his Elitism. He's still got 2 strong characters that Dan really can't block too well. Looks like he's considering the attack here.
Enjoy watching how frequently Bernie is reviewing what he has in his hand. And he's constantly just shuffling through.
Absolutely. So a 3/2/3 Nimble Construct coming in, and Dan's going to decide here whether he wants to block or not. Now Bernie's got all of his resources open, and keep in mind that he has the Alliance of Handy Weirdos. So at this point, he could pump 2 times to make that a 5/4 character.
Right. That's pretty nice.
Dan's going to rearrange, look at it a little bit different, and both of these players usually will have some great hand manipulation there with the, I don't know if it's nervous ticks or just card playing habits, but generally you see every player has something that they do like that. And this is the strength of Handy Weirdos here. Because Bernie's on the offensive, it really pays off for him. He can just keep swinging in knowing that Dan can't really block unless he wants to lose a character by Bernie paying for it. So Dan's going to respond by drawing a card, see if he can maybe get an answer here. Looking for a flip up, potentially, which is a mechanic in the spoils where I face down resources, you can flip it up and put it in play. And there Dan goes with his hand shuffling. Both players seem to be experts at this art. And as we've seen off the bat, this is exactly how we'd expect this game to go. Bernie came out extremely aggressive, just playing characters and swinging. Dan has some Obscene Astrologer tricks, playing some tactics, and trying to control the game a bit. So he doesn't block, he takes the 3, and now the Madcap comes in. He doesn't respond with a blocker, so Bernie's going to respond with a tactic. And he plays Seraphim Magic, giving that character +3 strength and drawing him a card. So, Dan didn't block, he gives the character +3, so that's a total of 6 damage that Dan has to take. Bernie plays the rest of his resources for, I believe that looks like a protracted golem on the table. I get those golems mixed up, so forgive me if that's the case. So Dan's going to choose to draw a card instead of playing a resource on his turn. Bernie's going to take the Shadowy Mugger damage, it's number 2 from the covert. Now Bernie's out of resources, so Dan has kind of free reign of the board here. Bernie's only got 1 character out. But Dan does need to stabilize here. He needs to do something to limit Bernie's offensive potential here in the next couple rounds. And you'll notice both players at this point have played a face down, and Dan has to pass the turn. So I guess he didn't see anything he liked. He's maybe sitting on a tactic that he wants to play. Brady's going to come in, and we'll see if he draws a card or plays a resource. Or did he already? Did I miss it? He might have drawn a card. I think he did draw, because he wouldn't miss that chance.
I'm being hypnotized by his hand shuffling.
So Bernie pays 3, and he plays straight up removal, improvised blowtorch on the Woody Worm. And I'm surprised here, and I might be just an ignorant player, but I would generally want to attack, see what my opponent does, and then if they block with Woody Worm, respond with a removal, and make them essentially waste a removal or a character. But Bernie knows a lot, and I'm not going to deny that. So he swings in with that Golem. Keep him 4 open. He has 1 pump. And he's going to block with the Enchantress here. Bernie has a chance of pumping it, but they're just going to cancel that damage out, basically. No one can do enough to kill the other. Ascendant Madcap swings in for 3. Now, if Bernie has a pump in his hand that's greater than just the standard Alliance of Handy Weirdos, this could be the game. So Dan's in a tough spot here, whether or not to block or to take it and hope for the best.
There's a lot of shuffling going on.
A lot of decisions to make.
Yeah.
And he's sitting on 6. He could try to draw into something here. Looks like he's paying 4 to flip up. Delusive Strumpet, that's a character that can come into play anytime you can play a tactic.
Nice.
And I believe it's a 4-speed, 2 strength, 2 life, which isn't going to kill the Ascendant Madcap, but you might just be trying to chump block with it. And again, the hand shuffling commences. Always gotta keep in mind what you got in that hand. Looks like he's gonna block with the Delusive Strumpet. And the Delusive Strumpet, you can discard a card from your hand and put it into play as a face-down resource. So he's gonna block it, and then before it's destroyed, after damage is assigned, he's gonna use that ability and put it back in his stack.
Now, is that an ability that you can use if you had no cards in your hand?
No. You'd have to be able to discard something out of your hand in order to do it. That's the cost of the ability, so as long as you meet the cost, you can do it.
Sometimes Magic had abilities where it wasn't typically a card, but like you could discard your hand, and then when you had no cards, it still counted.
Absolutely. We haven't seen anything like that quite yet, I don't think, in Spoils, and I doubt that we will. The cost is usually pretty specific in their necessity to be met. So Dan responded to the Nimble Conscript attack with a card draw, looking for something to maybe that Obscene Astrologer to tap into here. But I don't think he found anything. Looks like he got a resource, actually, of all things, which is the last thing you want to see in this situation. So he just goes ahead and takes it. Bernie opts not to pump, and then he actually pays those 3 to draw. Dan's down to 2 at this point. Bernie's at 14. And Dan chooses again to draw. He's looking for answers here. He can't really afford to build right now. Can't afford to resource that. He's looking for something that's going to get him back in the game. Looks like he paid 3 there. It's for another card draw. So again, he's kind of fishing around for something that's going to change the way this is going. Bernie's got 1 open. I don't know if he can do anything with it. But I do know that he hates to waste resources, so usually if you see it resources open, it's going to be used for something. Shadowy Mugger again does 2 damage. And we're looking at a pretty rough time here for Dan. He has to pass the turn. Bernie wastes that 1. I guess undepletes his 3 characters. Dan only has 2 blockers. He only has to take 2 to win. Bernie shows him the Gallant Commander, which is a character where if you play it, once he's in play, you can pay 2 to destroy him and deal 3 damage straight to your opponent's faction. Dan can't do anything about it, obviously, so that's the game.
Your curve was too great.
And there you have it. There's
awesome how quick that went.
a Spoils Limited game, and this is kind of the thing with Spoils Limited. It is a game that's very much built around limited format as well as constructed, but I think a lot of the emphasis is on the limited play. And it shows. I mean, all the factions are pretty well balanced. You can go into whatever's open, whatever's available. And what you saw here, at least in my mind, wasn't necessarily, Bernie didn't do anything fancy, anything too exciting. He drafted really good characters. He built a really solid aggro deck. And Dan probably had some options, but he just didn't see him this game. So congrats to both of these players. Thanks, guys, for listening. And we'll have more games coming soon.